Hey, and welcome to another exciting edition of your Pittsburgh Steelers show on your SteelerFury.com podcast. I'm your host, Bradshaw DeBenton, a.k.a. Will Massasak. Might also know me as Accidental Zen on Twitter. We're all just the same guy. And we're here hosting the show tonight with the original cohort for this show and one that money definitely can't buy, even the Powerball winnings. His name is Dom. He also goes by FC. He's with us. How are you, sir?
I'm doing very well. Can't complain.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just saying before we went on air that I got 3 numbers right in the Mega Millions this week, and that sounds really exciting until you understand that the prize was $10. But $10 is still more than I've won in the Mega Millions in a really long time. So I think maybe one time ever I might have exceeded a lottery winning of $10. I might have won 20 once. It's not very good lottery luck, but have pretty good football rooting interest luck because your Pittsburgh Steelers are somehow 8-0, and we're here to talk about it. FC, I'm going to throw it to you first. You're going to be the glass half empty or the glass half full about the Steelers' victory over Dallas?
I'm probably going to be more glass half full than a lot of people would be after that game. When I sarcastically picked 47-0, which was half-hearted sarcastic, there was a lot of things I didn't take into account for, and I think you got to give a lot of credit to the Dallas coaching staff. I think you got to give a lot of credit to the players that participated on the field, and you got to say that Garrett Gilbert for making his first start, seeing his second action, I believe, in an NFL game, acquitted himself pretty darn well.
Yeah, well, bringing up, of course, I'll play the role of bad cop this week. That brings up the question: how can Garrett Gilbert, who wasn't even in the league 2 weeks ago, come into an NFL football game and look like about 10 times the quarterback that Mason Rudolph is in year 3? That's the part that is mystifying to me.
I think there's several factors. First factor is Garrett Gilbert is a very intelligent young man that has a good mind for football. I believe that he may never be a super successful NFL quarterback, but I wouldn't be surprised if 10 or 15 years down the line, he's your Todd Peterson or, guys that have moved on to be, or Frank Reich type guys that moved on to be NFL head coaches. I believe he will have a future in football. The second thing that really goes overlooked is Mike McCarthy has a PhD in the Dom Capers, Dick LeBeau defense, considering he's faced it, coached against it pretty much his entire pro career. Now, Gunther Cunningham didn't run a 3-4 just like Dick LeBeau or just like, Keith Butler or just like Dom Capers. But he still ran a 3-4. He still had zone with blitzes, so basically, Mike McCarthy has seen what the Steelers have done defensively for about 30 years, so he really didn't need a ton of film.
It's true. Well, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Second factor first. Go ahead.
He executed. He had a game plan. He had a way of attacking it. He had base principles where he knew out of certain formations what he was going to get out of the defense, and that, that's something that can't really be accounted for. It should be. I mean, if he really, 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 really dug into the game, I think he could. But I don't see too many people digging into a game that deep, considering it's not something I thought of. I don't think it's something that you thought of, and we dig into these games pretty deep every week. Sure.
Well, and I was going to say the other thing was that the Steelers played a lot of base. I think they were pretty determined to stop the run game for Dallas, and Dallas's response to that was pretty effective. They found that mismatch of that extra linebacker on the field, and they targeted, with
absolutely. If you look at what they did in the run game to take away our over defense with the zone cutback game, especially with Tony Pollard, brilliant. It immediately the Steelers showed something against Baltimore in the second half. They came out and tried to show it against Dallas, and Dallas had an immediate answer for it, and they basically ran us out of the defense.
Sure. Well, and I think it's the Steelers also did something a little different with that over defense. They actually had, instead of having Watt and Dupree together on the end of the line, with one of them dropping and one of them basically playing the edge. Instead of doing that, which is what they had done previously, they had those guys in the middle. Basically one guy on the edge, one of the normal edges playing middle linebacker, and then Vince Williams playing off ball on that side. And it didn't really give a chance to – I mean, if you've got T.J. Watt and Bud Dupree on the end of the line, nobody is running that cutback the way that they did. So that was obviously a response to seeing that, slightly different formation, getting yourself T.J. Watt or Bud Dupree off the line, then you're going to run that way. So, yeah, I think that's good coaching. Go ahead.
I watched a ton of Dallas football games this year, but if that's what Mike McCarthy's putting on the field from a coaching and schematic standpoint week in, week out, I think it's time for Jerry and Stephen Jones to completely relinquish the control, bring somebody in that can run that organization, and let Mike McCarthy do his thing. Because, I seen the Atlanta game, and I actually thought McCarthy did a pretty good job coaching in that game as well. I hear all these things that McCarthy's going to be one and done. I actually thought he did a very good job. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a Homestead kid, Sarah Catholic High School,
sure.
Coach at the University of Pittsburgh. He wanted to stick it.
And ticket booth guy on the toll road, on the turnpike. So
right. So worked at big gyms in Greenfield. I mean, I thought you have to really tip your hat to Dallas. All things considered, missing 3-4 offensive linemen, missing their starting quarterback. But what people aren't taking into account is they got a lot of defensive guys back, and their defense played hard.
Yeah, I thought Dallas represented themselves pretty well in this game. I have an idea of what their fatal flaw has been this year, aside from injuries, and I will get to that in just a second. But first, we're also joined by our second cohort tonight. He is representing the great state of Indiana. He is not a senator yet, but he's working on it. His name is Jeremy Coleman. You might also know him as Smith is Smoking. He's with us. How are you, sir?
Doing good. Sorry I'm a little late to the action tonight.
Oh, no. That's okay. You're just giving us more chance to talk. We're never going to complain about that, actually. Just to catch you up, Don was just saying that he thought that the coaching job that Mike McCarthy put out there on the field, not only in Sunday's game, but prior to that this season, has shown that maybe he's deserving of getting a little more control over what they're doing there, and for the Jones boys to, relinquish some control. What I was about to say, and I'll throw it to you, Jeremy, is I think that the Achilles heel for the Cowboys this year, aside from the injuries issues that they've had, which are no small thing, especially on the offensive line, is when you have a mega, top 5 pick running back, you are expected to feed that guy the ball. And in the NFL 2020, if you don't complement that with an amazing play action pass game, something that's really committed to that run and they're really committed to the play action pass game, you're not going to be so successful at winning football games. Most of the teams that do that don't win so much. But they have this nice running back, but Mike McCarthy's offense isn't really geared to that play action game, is it?
No, it's not. And it also doesn't help that Ezekiel Elliott has put the ball on the turf a lot this year, too. When your star running back is not taking care of the football, that doesn't put a lot of confidence in him. I don't know what it is this year. One of my best friends has been a Dallas Cowboy fan for life, and I have a great pleasure of poking fun at him every single year. But he even says it just doesn't look like Zeke is there all the time. It doesn't look like he's dialed in this year, and I think that's a big difference too. Maybe that's part of losing Dak Prescott. I mean, when you lose a franchise quarterback, a guy who was putting up numbers like he did, that can definitely get in the back of your head. And then, your offensive line goes into absolute shambles. I don't know. It just wouldn't surprise me if Zeke isn't fully dialed in this year.
Yeah, and I think there's some issues with the money and his relationship with the ownership that came out of all of that stuff. Who knows? FC, what's your take on that in terms of Mike McCarthy's fit for having a guy like Zeke Elliott, who's not really like he's not a pass game running back, right?
He's not. I mean, he's not horrible. He's very average as a receiver. He's very average in blitz pickup. You know, Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones interviewed Mike McCarthy, and I don't think Mike McCarthy really has hidden what his scheme has been, you know, even in Green Bay. And I kind of feel bad a little bit for Mike McCarthy because this is the second time in his, you know, he's got 2 head coaching jobs. This is the second time that ownership has attempted to make him look like a real prick. You know, if you think about, he was the guy that got rid of Brett Favre in Green Bay and turned Aaron Rodgers. Not true. Ted Thompson made the move, admitted it after the fact, but Ted Thompson made the move. And now he's the guy that can't feed probably the most overpaid player in the NFL, Ezekiel Elliott. When you think, I believe Ezekiel Elliott is making $6 to $8 million a year more than every back in the NFL, Derrick Henry. I even think he makes $4 or $5 million more than Kamara does a year. And he signed that contract the year before those guys. Generally, contracts increase over time and don't decrease. So it's going to be his responsibility to have success with Ezekiel Elliott running the ball because, well, you paid all that money for that running back with, you know, 3 offensive linemen that are down, and Ezekiel Elliott is, well, a fumbler, as Jeremy pointed out.
Well, let's talk for a second about the Steelers' defense in this game. I mean, they are what they are. They tried to take away the run game. They said they'd rather see the quarterback beat them with these, you know, passes against zone coverage and whatnot. And, you know, more or less the strategy was effective enough for their offense to finally catch up and go ahead in this game. But I want to talk about the other side for a second because, I don't know, Jeremy, am I right to be concerned about the Steelers' run game? And what are you seeing the last few weeks, and particularly in this Dallas game? Is it just my sense is that maybe it's the Steelers' interior offensive line is not really playing up to their expectations the last couple of weeks. How do you see it?
Yeah, I'd say I've expected more from the offensive line the past 2 weeks. In reality, they've kind of gotten bullied around when it comes to the run game these past 2 weeks. You know, I mean, I knew Baltimore was going to be tough sledding. You know, they've got a strong defensive line group. They were going to be tough to run the ball on. You know, the Steelers didn't start moving the ball in that game until Big Ben started calling the plays basically for an entire second half. And then, you know, I actually thought the Steelers started out the game running the ball somewhat effectively with James Conner. He was getting right around 4 yards a carry, but then Ben got hurt. And you could tell it was one of those injuries. It's like, well, the rest of the game, he's going to have to be taking snaps from shotgun because we don't trust the knees coming out from under center. You know, it was a weird, funky injury where Neville Gallimore got in, hit him one way, and then, you know, another Cowboy hit him from another way. They actually said if that Cowboy player had not hit him, that knee injury could have been a lot worse if Ben would have been on the turf and taken that hit. So, but it basically, I think that injury alone kind of limited what Pittsburgh could do in the run game. They do a lot of running from under center. They do some from shotgun here and there. You know, they do have a few sweeps, a few dives, stuff like that. But I definitely think that affected it. And then, honestly, I thought Dallas just played really well. They just showed up, and they were beating people across from – just mentioned Neville Gallimore. Yep. He was wrecking that interior of the offensive line. He was too quick for Matt Filer, and he was giving Pouncey fits.
It wasn't just those two, FC. I thought David DeCastro might have played the worst game I've ever seen him play. I mean, I'm sure you're going to whip out one that you think he played worse, but he just didn't seem to be it just seemed to be a bad matchup for him more than anything else. What did you see?
Wow. This is not going to be fun. Big problem with Randy Fitchner in Canada. Steelers run game is predictable. It's predictable by formation. It's predictable by motion. It's predictable. They're running the same formation sets that they have for the last 15 or 20 years, thinking that they'll magically find a way for 7 to block 8. And it's never going to work. It just is not going to work. I think the Steelers need to vary their run game a lot. The motion, the pulling, it just doesn't work in today's football. The motion does if you can get the numbers. All the pulling of the offensive lineman does not work. Nobody's two gaps anymore. Everybody's attacking. Everyone's playing downhill. Everyone's getting in that guard's back pocket. So you have to have a great counter run game off of those plays, which the Steelers haven't shown. You can't be predictable. You can't be stale. And you definitely cannot lose the line of scrimmage. And if the eighth man in the box happens to be a linebacker and your run game's going for 3 yards and carry, you deal with it. What you guys pointed out with, Gilmore, and there was a lot more problems than that. The Steelers' offensive line actually played poorly, and they played poorly for a few weeks in a row. They're good at pass play. They're not great run blockers. I think part of the reason why they're not such great run blockers is the Steelers' run game's predictable. It's stale. All this motion and all this window dressing, it worked for the first, 4 or 5 weeks. But teams have 4 or 5 weeks of film now, so they know what's coming. When I see the motion to Chase Claypool and I see Matt Filer so light in his stance, I know it's power run right. Filer's giving away the pull, and they don't do nothing else out of that formation except for run the power right, or every once in a while you'll get, the shallow cross with 2 comebacks on the outside. And that's the look that they've shown out of it. And you cannot successfully run the ball if you're getting outnumbered at the point of attack.
Sure, and if you're sitting at home and that's and you see it coming, guaranteed that somebody out there is paying attention to film to see it.
I'm not that smart. If you can sit there at home, guys, and you have a general idea what the Steelers are going to do, and they do it, we love you here, but we're not football Einsteins. There's guys getting paid hundreds of thousands of dollars. So they're probably a little bit better at it than we are.
Possibly, yeah. But, one thing I'd say, Jeremy, is I think they're only giving token carries to all the misdirection stuff, or token, touches to all that stuff. I feel like they need to use that stuff a little bit more for it to really carry the threat, because the week after Chase Claypool, had the 2 runs for touchdowns, they did some stuff out of that motion. Teams were really biting on it, right? But then they didn't really give it to him very much after that. And so, it's basically, they have maybe 1 or 2 times a game where they do something out of that motion other than just hand it off. Not good enough. What's your take on that?
I'd agree. Honestly, the past several years, there are times where Pittsburgh's really good at doing something, and then it's like they want to go away from it and try something else. I don't know. It just seems like, the defense is going to game plan for it now, so we're not going to keep doing it all game long. That's something I feel like I've seen from the Steelers really the past few years, where it just seems like we don't want to get too predictable, even if what we're doing is, being effective. I would have been out in both of these games allowing Big Ben to attack that Dallas defense right from the get-go. I feel like we're way too conservative at times when it comes to the offensive attack. We should be in blitz mode all game long, because that's when we've looked the best offensively this year.
Yeah, that's definitely what the Steelers do best. Going into that game, Dallas's run defense had been absolutely hideous. Now they got some guys back. They seem to be more determined to stop that in this game. But still, I get trying to do that, but there isn't a better way to attack a team with a bad run defense than put up some early points in the air, get them thinking about that, and then run the football against them when they can't stop it. That's always nice. So FC, what's the solution? What are the Steelers? Is it just literally have them come out the way they did against Tennessee every week, or is it that they need to get the run game going somehow? Get some different plays, run some different stuff this week that they have in their playbook that they don't use that much. What do you see them attempting to do this week, especially in a week where Ben hasn't practiced all week?
Ben not practicing all week is not a very big deal to me, to be honest with you.
Well, I meant that specifically in terms of not trying new stuff. That's
I have actually a decent answer for your question, and I think a lot of people are going to agree. We've used the words boring and stale and predictable. I would Ken Wisenhunt the offense a little bit. What you do with that is you make the practices a little bit more important. You make the game a little bit more fun. I think the damnest thing, my boy Ray McLeod was they cut to the Fox coverage real early, and 3 or 4 different times he threw a football, and he not only threw a football, he threw a football about 60 yards, and he not only threw a football about 60 yards, he threw the ball 60 yards with he was a little bit on the run, and he put it dead on the guy catching the ball for the kickers. And I said to myself, Ray McLeod can throw a fucking football.
Yeah.
I mean, 60 yards on the dot. Ray McLeod would see a trick play or two where he may throw the football. Ken Wisenhunt it. Make teams prepare for other things. Use the weapons that you have. The Steelers have, I honestly believe this, have as many offensive weapons with a healthy bench as any team in the NFL, including the Kansas City Chiefs, because we have so much depth, so many guys that can make plays. James Washington, Deontay Johnson, Ray McLeod, Chase Claypool, Juju Smith-Schuster, James Conner, Eric Ebron. Vince McDonald's run some people over in this league. That's a ton of weapons. It's a ton of depth. Let your playmakers make plays. Put them in positions to be successful. I don't think the Steelers have to remake the wheel offensively. I think the only thing they have to do is open things up. Put things on film. Make teams prepare. Sometimes the simple, basic things that you want to do open up because teams see that motion and they're like, uh-oh, Ray McLeod may throw the ball. We started running the bubble screen game a little bit more. Pump the bubble screen out there, throw the ball vertically. Steelers have had a ton of success with that over the last 4 or 5 years.
Yeah,
a lot more with Antonio Brown because, well, Antonio Brown can just lose people. Deontay Johnson has some of that ability. Throw the ball to Juju, throw the ball to Claypool, off the pump, and 9, off that bubble screen. Every safety wants to jump it.
Well, they had some success with that. With you always have to have like the tight end and big wide receiver in the front of that formation, and when you pump and those guys go to the seam, it's really been valuable. I can remember what's the name of the tight end that moved tight end that came to the Steelers and then got hurt after, like he couldn't stay healthy.
Virgil Green? Yeah.
So they did it with him one of the games where he was actually healthy. I remember they had some really good success with that, and it was like, whoa, that's with all those bubble screens, man, that was really effective. It was like
would it be nice if we had an athletic tight end like Eric Ebron?
Yeah, say that every year. Oh wait, we have one.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, dare we talk about how bad special teams was in this game? Because really,
Jim Fossil.
Yeah, it was the only thing that made this game really close. I mean, if you look at it, my prediction for the game was actually before I got on the show, I was going to say 30-13. You guys with your highfalutin expectations for the Steelers, I bumped it point to 31-13. But 30-13 is basically what this game was, except for blocked field goals, missed extra points, the big return on the punt return. That turned it into a nail biter at the end, which is crazy considering how well the Steelers special teams have played this year. Jeremy, you got anything to add for what happened to special teams in this game?
Other than the fact that it was absolutely abysmal, I don't know if there's a whole lot more to add. I don't understand, though, how Dallas had such a jump on the extra points, the field goals and everything, because, they were leaping or whatever. All an offensive lineman has to do is get up out of his stance and flip them, because they're not allowed to touch I don't think they're allowed to vault, I think is the correct term. They're not allowed to use leverage to get over those guys. Just stand up in your stance, and then all of a sudden they have to vault you.
Yeah, but FC they were actually breaking the rules anyway. I mean, he was
right. You're not allowed to touch the snapper.
Yes.
He had the hands on the back of the snapper.
But also, they got a key. Our little freaking snapper, who's very effective, bobs his head before he snaps the ball. And that was actually not picked up by me. It was picked up by one of those fine lads at Steelers Depot, and he posted a video of it, and I was like, by golly, he's right.
Yeah, that's not a good tell to have.
Right. So it's something that'll be broke. It's easy to break. Fake it. You know what I mean? Fake the bob and have him go outside. That's, but yeah, you're not allowed to touch the snapper. I know that for a fact. And every single time he missed the snapper. My problem is, why isn't our special teams coach or Mike Tomlin after the first time saying, look, it's a 15-yard penalty if they touch our snapper. Why are you not calling it? Because the snapper is protected. I
believe he didn't want to say too much about it because I think he was worried about being fined. But actually, I think that during the game that Mike Tomlin was irate about it, actually, because they mentioned it. He mentioned it when they asked him about not going for the field goal. And he mentioned that they, had that, they're going to talk to the league office or whatever about it. So I think they have an understanding that for some reason this crew wasn't calling it right, but who knows why. This is the NFL in 2020. It's like, don't question any officiating decisions of what to call or not to call. It's too hard to figure out. I will say about the long trick play punt return that I noted that it was two things about that play. First of all, that Benny Snell is the one that was supposed to have contained on that side, and he was not only not by the numbers or close to the numbers on the, keeping his outside contained, he crossed over not only the close hash, he crossed over the other hash. So that by the time that the throw went back across the field, literally the only player on the Steelers kick coverage team who made it over to past the far hash before the returner passed him was the punter. So the punter saw, what happened, and he made a beeline and tried to get him to cut back. But literally, like, the rest of the return team or kick coverage team was on the wrong side of the far hash, which is not a good way to cover kicks. I could just a guess. I don't know that much about special teams, but I pretty much can guarantee that's not what they had in mind. Guys, let's talk a little bit about this week's matchup. Pittsburgh Steelers finally at home, hosting your Cincinnati Bengals. If this game had been played a couple of weeks ago, we would have been saying the lowly Cincinnati Bengals who, have only managed to win a game this year. But can't be ignored that in their last game, they beat the Tennessee Titans, who are a pretty good football team. And also that they had a bye week. They have a bye week to prepare for the Steelers. So I'll start with you, FC. My sense is that this is kind of going to be Cincinnati's Super Bowl for Joe Burrow. So once again, the Steelers are going to take somebody's best shot. What do you figure Cincinnati's best shot is against the Steelers?
3 wides. Let Joe Burrow do his thing. Joe Mixon didn't practice again today, so I'm not sure if he's going to play. If he doesn't, I figure it's going to be a Gio Bernard type of get back. Gio Bernard type of game where he's going to see some run game where he's been pretty successful throughout his career, though not really given a chance. And he's a very good receiving back, and you're going to see some T. Higgins. You're going to see probably one of the most underrated wide receivers in the NFL, and Tyler Boyd. You may even get to see a little bit of A.J. Green. Really has been an impactful player for them. But I like me some Joe Burrow. I don't like me some Joe Burrow going against the Steelers' defense. Joe Burrow is a little bit too brave. And Steelers defense has really heard a lot of smack. So I expect they're going to have to come out 3 wide receivers, and they're going to have to attack Joe Hayden. They're going to have to attack Terrell Edmonds. Mika Fitzpatrick's really tightened up his pass coverage over the last 3 weeks. Steven Nelson is consistently consistent, giving up, I think, over the last 2 years, right around a 67 quarterback rating against.
Yep.
It's pretty good. Yeah, and they're going to cross their fingers and hope that their offensive line can hold up.
Well, Jeremy, this Joe Mixon news, every time it comes up, I think to myself, Man, I would much rather face Joe Mixon than Gio Bernard. For some reason, Gio Bernard, I don't understand that. As if you just said, doesn't really get a chance. I think that guy's better than Joe Mixon in every way, except for he's not as big. I mean, that's the only explanation I can get for why Joe Mixon is held in this esteem compared to Gio Bernard. What's your take on that situation?
Yeah, well, I mean, Joe Mixon has that prototype running back build. You know, he's 6 foot, 220 pounds, is supposed to be the tough runner between the tackles, where Gio Bernard, you know, he doesn't get that same recognition, even though he is a guy who runs extremely hard. You know, I liked him all the way back to his days in North Carolina. He's a great pass catcher out of the backfield. I mean, he's hurt the Steelers multiple times coming out of the backfield catching balls. And, I mean, he's going to be a tough matchup for all of our linebackers this week because he's so good in the pass game. And he's got a great first step, and that's what really separates him. He can go from 0 to 60 pretty quick. So, I mean, he is a formidable weapon. Well, like you said, I think Joe Mixon is a little more predictable kind of in his running style. You know, you expect him to be the physical back, where it's like Gio Bernard's that guy that's going to surprise you with how physical he can play.
Sure. I mean, FC, getting back to the Bengals wide receivers, I mean, I don't know. I watched the Tennessee game, for instance. I'm hard pressed to tell you why AJ Green is still getting an NFL paycheck. Like it's obvious to me that he's a shell of the player that he once was, and he's about the fourth best wide receiver they got right now on their team. I don't know. What do you see in that situation? Is he just not really come back from the injury, or his heart's not in it, or like what's going on with him?
Leg injuries in wide receivers can be devastating, and knee to ankle to foot and Achilles, he can't run. I mean, I remember him at the University of Georgia, and he got injured early in his NFL career. I think that I agree with you. I think he might be done, and I think it's a shame. But I think Cincinnati wants to stay kind of loyal to him and not basically deactivate him, which might be the best thing for the team, but it might not be the best thing for the wide receiver group. You know, I think that A.J. Green is probably a great mentor to T. Higgins. T. Higgins is a little bit taller and lankier, but I think that he and A.J. Green have a similar skill set when A.J. Green entered in the NFL. Super explosive, super great on back shoulder balls, great on, you know, positioning their bodies between the defender, giving the quarterback a good target. It's the only reason I can come up with. Is basically to mentor T. Higgins through his rookie year.
Sure. I mean, T. Higgins is I thought he'd be a really good possession receiver. He's better than I thought he was going to be in the NFL, especially as a rookie. Begging the question, though, for Jeremy, how good is this rookie class of wide receivers? I mean, you even have undrafted free agents who are lighting it up or starting for teams. It's what a class.
Yeah, it's really remarkable how much talent there really was at the wide receiver classes. You know, everyone said it was going to be a great group. I don't think everyone thought it'd make such a huge impact right away. You know, Jerry Jeudy had a huge game last week for the Broncos and their comeback attempt. I think it was against the Falcons. He had like 6 catches for 125 yards. Chase Claypool has effectively been a starting receiver here in Pittsburgh, you know, since about week 3 or week 4 when he went off. Just all over the board, they've been showing up this year.
Jefferson for the Vikings, now they're number 1.
Right, Jefferson. I mean, Brandon Ayuk out in San Francisco. You know, Deebo Samuel's been injured the whole year. Brandon Ayuk is effectively their number 1 receiver. He's definitely their most talented wide receiver out there.
And now, you know, Mims is healthy now, and for the Jets, he looks like their number 1 guy. It's like everybody's now their new number 1 guy. It's not just that they made teams. Like I was like, okay, this class is really deep. There are going to be undrafted free agents who will be starting for teams, you know, have nice careers. But I did not think that there would be so many of these guys that would just step in and be, you know, immediately like the number 1 or number 2 on their team. It's amazing.
But
yes,
I will say this real quick. I have begun my hard dig into the 2021 NFL draft. And what I see is there's a ton of great wide receivers again, but you know what there aren't a lot of? Offensive linemen. And I'm starting to see the correlation between the two, meaning all the teams are now throwing the ball. These kids are so advanced coming out of college now with the passing games, really at the expense of the run game and offensive linemen. I'm at the point where being in the new world thinking where you may not even consider taking offensive linemen early, which is a dirty thought, especially with people spending $150 million a year on quarterbacks or $150 million contracts for quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes and so on. But just the level of play of offensive line, it's bad.
Well, what's funny about that is that both the Steelers and the Bengals right now have some young offensive linemen or new starters that look pretty good. I mean, the Bengals typically in past years, they had Andrew Whitworth, but largely, the reason a team like that stays bad for a really long time is that they have bad line somewhere, offense or defense. They had a nice defensive line and had Andrew Whitworth, and they got by on that, for a certain period of time. But Adeniji looks like a guy that can play a little bit, which I'm not sure which one of you were. I got a little confused about the tennis match. Who's maybe Jeremy? Tell me a little bit about Adeniji. Is somebody that you liked in this year's draft? I noticed that he had a pretty good game against Tennessee. It stood out to me.
Gotcha. Who did you say there? I didn't catch that.
Is it Adeniji, the tackle from Kansas?
Oh yes, yeah, Kareem Adeniji.
He's starting at right tackle for the Bengals now.
Yeah, he's a guy that I thought had the athleticism to play offensive tackle. I thought he might kind of shift into guard, kind of like Matt Filer has, for us, started off as a tackle. His best position might have been at a guard going forward. But he's done a very good job sticking with pass rushers, and his athleticism is showing up on that right side, which has made a world of difference in the time Joe Burrow has had to sit back there and distribute the ball.
Yeah, actually,
power is as good as any offensive lineman that I've seen, and that is a very good skill to have at offensive tackle.
Yeah, is he playing? Is he playing tackle for Bobby Hart right now? Is that what's happening? Am I crazy? Because they list him as a backup guard, but I thought that he played tackle against Tennessee.
He started. Bobby Hart went out. Whenever Bobby Hart is healthy, if he's healthy this week, I imagine he's going to slide back into right guard. He's played both right guard and right tackle this year.
Yeah, I gotcha. And I kind of feel like Cincinnati is both simultaneously not as bad as they have been in previous years, and they're a little bit better coached maybe in certain respects.
Very, 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 very well coached team. But I was not a big believer in that coach. I believe in that coach more than I believe in Sean McVay now. How about that?
Wow. Yeah, like it just feels like they're onto something. It's nice to have a nice quarterback who can play a little bit. But
right. If I give you $2,000 worth of ingredients and you cook me a good meal, all right. If I give you $9.95 and you cook me a good meal, that's one hell of a chef. And I don't think Cincinnati has a ton of talent. Joe Burrow is a good quarterback, and they got T. Higgins. But outside of that, Gio Bernard's a decent back. They don't got a ton of talent. And they mainly have 2 wins. They could easily have 4 or 5. And they definitely should have beat the Eagles.
Yeah, that was the way that game played out was not so good. Let's talk about the other side of the ball for a second, Jeremy. The Bengals defense against the Steelers offense. Steelers need to run it, need to get the running game going. Cincinnati, although gamely trying to stop Derrick Henry at the beginning of the game last week, as the game went on, they had less and less success actually stopping the run. But they have a lot of young players at linebacker that look pretty good. I'm wondering what your take is on Cincinnati's defense and how they match up with the Steelers' offense.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they're young. They drafted 3 linebackers this year. Akeem Davis-Gaither out of Appalachian State. I know he was a little bit of a board favorite as a potential coverage inside linebacker. The other 2 are
Logan Wilson from Wyoming.
Sorry, say that again?
Logan Wilson from Wyoming.
Yeah, okay, that was the one. For some reason, I kept wanting to say Logan Ryan, and I knew that wasn't right, so I wasn't going to say it. But yeah, so they're young. I think it's just part of kind of picking up the speed of the NFL. Yeah, I think that's definitely an adjustment every player goes through. That really the defensive line has not been very good. They just traded away Carlos Dunlap, their Bengals all-time leading sacker. Even though he hadn't done much this year, I think before he was traded, he had 1 sack and maybe 20 tackles. So getting rid of him wasn't a huge deal, but it definitely kind of signals the changing of the guard on defense. How they're going to be, putting this in the hands of a lot of young guys, and they're going to run with it. The one guy who I think has played really good for them is Jesse Bates, free safety. He's had a few takeaways these last few weeks. I think he's playing. I think he's probably their most consistent defender right now.
Yeah, I mean, FC. What's your take on this? The Steelers' offense and Bengals. Young team, inconsistent maybe, but there are going to be times where they're able to stop the Steelers' offense.
Is there going to be times where the Steelers' offense stops the Steelers' offense? And the answer, yes. I think that we're all approaching this game as if Ben Roethlisberger's the starter. If Ben's the starter, I come out and I make them think I'm going to establish the run game, but I'm play action passing and I'm taking advantage of their aggressiveness. The Bengals defense is young. They are fast. They play downhill. They're ultra aggressive, but they also leave themselves susceptible to a lot of things. Kind of like Arizona, the Cardinals defense.
Sure.
Whenever it's going right, Arizona actually has better pieces. They're more experienced, better pieces. So I don't want anybody to have the wrong idea, but in what they're trying to do schematically, it's very similar. And they want to make the quarterback make quick decisions under pressure and just like that. You do that against Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, guys that still have arms, like Patrick Mahomes, who's younger. They're going to pick your ass apart, and that's pretty much what I expect will happen if Ben is quarterback. I really expect the Steelers try to put the game away quickly. I know I say that every week, but I think for the overall would be best for the team. If Mason Rudolph starts, which is a possibility, God bless us, all bets are off, and I think that we try to drag them into a slobber knocker, old school AFC Central football game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely assuming at this moment, because I don't know any differently, that Ben is going to play. But before we even get to Ben playing or not playing, Jeremy, what's your take? First of all, even if Tyson Alualu is like sort of 80-90% and he can go, are you playing him in this game?
I wouldn't. I'd give him another week to rest. I would rather, let Isaiah Buggs and Carlos Davis get reps rather than risking Alualu getting another setback. I know they both kind of had their moments at times against Dallas last week, but most part they didn't play all that great. They looked like backups. I even thought Harry Mondu, however you say it, had a flash, had a great tackle or whatever, but I mean, he was getting walked back in the run game. I think that's just something we're going to have to weather the storm with. Because I'd rather see Tyson healthy rather than trot him out there and then just have him, play half a game only to re-aggravate his injury. I'd much rather sit him and give these young guys a chance. Because at some point we need to see if these guys can, learn from a mistake, turn a corner per se. This week's as good as ever to do it because the Bengals don't have a great offensive line. This could be their week where they get a little bit of their redemption back, so to say.
Yeah. Well, FC, though, on the other hand, it's a division game. It's an important game in terms of their standings in the division. Because basically, if they somehow don't win this game against Cincinnati and then lose to Baltimore on Thanksgiving, which isn't a ridiculous possibility, then that really puts them sort of wastes all of this great momentum that they had earlier in the season. I don't know. What's your take on, do you think Alu and Ben will play, and what would you do with them this week?
Depending on Ben's knees, if he's not hot for COVID, which it doesn't look like he's been yet, and the knees are actually fine, it was just a hyperextension, like holy shit type moment, and he's all right, I probably would play Ben. But I will say this, if we sit Ben and Alu this week and we win, do you then play him against Jacksonville next week? Or do you let them both try to get to 100%?
Yeah.
It's a tough decision. That's why the guys get paid a lot of money.
Yeah.
Personally, if Ben can go, I play him. If Alu is 85 or 90%, it's probably as good as he's been since he was at Cal. You know what I mean? I don't think too many NFL offensive or defensive linemen are ever 100% after they step in the NFL. And I understand what you guys mean. I'd hate to re-aggravate an injury. Figuring that Alu is at 85 or 90%, I probably would sit him, and I agree with Jeremy. And I may sit him again against Jacksonville, which he may not be happy with, because he probably wants to go back to it's where he played his rookie ball. But I think it might be best for the team to roll into that Thursday matchup with some healthy players, and that's the main reason why I would like to hang points early is to get, Stephen Two and Cameron Hayward also off the field a little bit, maybe Pouncey get a break, and because we really did get fucked on that bye week. We practiced and we didn't play a game and all that, but, we prepared for 4 days like they were playing a game.
Yep.
They didn't get away from the facility. Anybody that's been stuck home teleworking with their entire family, I mean, you're ready to strangle pretty much everybody in the house, including the dog and cat, just because you just need to get away at times. And I don't.
It looked at me funny. The cat.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to that end, I was going to say earlier that I think part of the issue with the run game, or maybe the offensive line a little bit, is that they look like guys that could have used a bye week. That are the pressure of A, being undefeated, and B, playing all these close games, is definitely can wear on you a little bit. But one last thing about should they play or not for the good of the team. Anthony McFarland, who's he's a theoretical spark to the run game. He hasn't been that much of a spark yet, but they seem to be trying to use him that way. He missed practice today with an illness. In this era of you miss practice with an illness, and then 3 or 4 days later you test positive for COVID. Jeremy, would you basically sit Anthony McFarland and not let him be with the team for 5 or 6 days until you're 100% sure that he's not COVID positive, and meaning that he would miss this game? What would you do about that situation?
I mean, I think you have to, more as a precaution for the rest of the team. You can't afford to lose more people on this team already. We've already, this week Big Ben can't practice because he might be positive. You can't run that risk with, more members on your team. You're already looking at potentially playing on Sunday without, Vance McDonald will not be playing on Sunday. He tested positive. He's away from the facility. He won't be playing. Big Ben might not be playing.
That's Williams.
I think Jalen Samuel is even on that list. So we're starting to hit critical running back depth too, where you might only be looking at, Connor and Snell. And then I guess you could elevate Trey Edmonds off the practice squad. I think he's still on the practice squad as like your emergency third guy. But I mean, I would hate to be giving him snaps at this point. I think you have to play it cautious because you don't want to be that team that all of a sudden has 11 guys you can't play.
Sure. FC, what's your take on this whole thing?
I thought Jalen Samuels already had COVID. So, I was kind of surprised that he was if that he was on the list. But I agree with Jeremy. If McFarland, I would at this point I would tell him, go home, and I would keep him away, and I would test him. I would have him tested every day, and if it comes up negative, then maybe then he returns next week. But you can't take the risk of several players getting affected.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I just feel like you got to play it safe. It hurts a little bit in the interim because he would have been, McFarland would have been part of this game plan, I'm sure, if he were healthy. But let's hope that it's nothing, and next week he gets back to the fold or whatever. But yeah, I just feel like it's going to get nothing but worse and more tricky over the course of the next few weeks. So play it safe now. I think. Especially, it's a game against Cincinnati, not a game against, Buffalo or Baltimore or Kansas City or something, right? So at any rate, gentlemen, we're going to come back and talk about our predictions for this week's Steelers game against your Cincinnati Bengals. But first, it's time for our illustrious pick segment brought to us by
Sports and Shit, where you can find all your Steelers swag, dog beds, koozies, shirts, flags, all sorts of memorabilia. It's also brought to you by John Perry, Mike Pereira, and a special call to Tony Romo and Jim Nance. Thanks, sweet baby Jesus, I don't have to listen to you two cocksuckers again.
A special shout out also to Al Riveron, who went on Twitter to defend his decision to give Marcus Peters an interception on a ball that he never actually possessed. That's an all-timer. It's like, I know that he took 3 steps, and you were so busy focusing on the fact that he took 3 steps that you didn't notice that he didn't actually catch the ball. Welcome to the NFL, kids. Anyway, let's talk about our games. I got a couple games this week. By the way, my note to those of you who are going to watch football before the Steelers play in the 4:00 hour is don't bother watching the early games. There are some duds in the early window, but let's go skip to the late window. The Buffalo Bills dismantled the previous Super Bowl favorite Seattle Seahawks and their MVP Russell Wilson last week in Buffalo. Now they go to Arizona, to another fairly highly regarded team in the NFC with another very, very well-regarded quarterback to play the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals are a 1.5-point favorite over Buffalo. That's a wild line, although it's a tough one to pick. I'll start with you, Jeremy. How do you see this game?
I'll take the Cardinals. That's a long trip for Buffalo. I think you kind of saw that last week with Seattle going all the way to Buffalo and playing at such an odd time. That was 10 o'clock, Pacific time when they played. One of my best friends told me not to take Seattle, and of course I did because I was, banking on Russ Wilson. He said, the stat line for teams that going from the West Coast to the East Coast to play 1 o'clock games is just horrible. Just horrible. And of course, I ignored him, which I shouldn't have done. I think it kind of plays in that same fact, Buffalo is going to be traveling out west and doing the same thing. I'm going to take the Cardinals there.
And FC, how about you?
I will take the Arizona Cardinals to win the game by a field goal, maybe 6 points. And over the last 20 years, West Coast teams traveling east win at a 38% clip. So, yeah, your friend was giving you very solid gambling.
There you go. There's the stat.
Got that information.
Yeah, indeed. Unless they're playing the New York Giants this year, or the Jets, which I think somebody just beat the Jets and the Giants 2 weeks in a row at the Meadowlands and had to go home in between or something, like madness. I think it's time to take Buffalo seriously. That's what I think. Okay, yeah, they played a West Coast team last week. We keep waiting for the other shoe to drop with Josh Allen, that he's going to somehow revert back to the quarterback he's been the previous 2 years. But, not perfect, but he plays a nice blend of football that seems to work for their team and their personnel. And their defense, It's not bad. Like some of their parts in Buffalo is pretty good. And I think they are an excellently coached football team. Not necessarily by a mastermind strategist, but by just a good football coach, kind of like in the Mike Tomlin vein. I will take Buffalo for the upset here. Let's talk about your Seattle Seahawks bouncing back at the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams are a 1.5-point favorite. Somebody has to beat somebody and win the NFC West. I'm not sure which one of these teams is going to be. I'll start with UFC. How do you see this Rams a 1.5-point favorite over Seattle?
I already took my first little pot shot at Sean McVay. I'm actually not going to take a second one. When push comes to shove, it comes down to Russell Wilson, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett against Jared Goff. Oh, that's enough. I'll take Seattle and the point.
Me too. Jeremy, how about you?
Yeah, I'm taking Seattle too. I think they're a little pissed off that they got taken to the woodshed this past week by the Bills. They were down quick and they were down early. They had to really fight back just to make it out a ball game. I think they're going to come out pretty motivated. Yeah, I'm definitely taking Seattle.
Yeah, I think the ability of teams to run the football against Seattle is what people are worried about in this game, and probably why the Rams are a favorite. But I don't know, the Rams are really that good at anything. I think they get a lot out of what they have talent-wise on offense, more than they actually are. But when they face teams that are just sort of like better organized teams with better players, I think they tend to not do as well. So that was my.
Quickly, I figured something out. Aaron Donald and the way he plays, it reminded me of something. I couldn't figure it out, and it came to me last week about 2 or 3 hours after the podcast. And it reminds me of Reggie White playing for the Philadelphia Eagles when Randall Cunningham went out with a knee injury and then he left, where it was basically Reggie White, and I love Mike Golick, but he wasn't that great. And he was such a dominant player that the entire offense basically was built to avoid Reggie White. And that's what teams have started doing against the Rams, is just avoid Aaron Donald and you're fine.
Right.
And Ben Ramsey, God bless him, he owns the Steelers and he gives Ben fits. But boy, is he getting burned a lot this year.
Yeah, it sort of like feels like an end of the line season. What's that?
Got a Chad Scott video on how to play quarterback. Turn and watch the receiver run by you.
Yeah, not a good. The Chad Scott reference is never a good thing to have come out when you're a quarterback. Speaking of Aaron Donald, potentially. I actually was on a thread today on The Athletic, and people were being asked to vote for who they thought was going to win the major awards this year in the NFL. And there were people that were like, gee, I'm not really sure who the defensive player of the year is. I don't really have any good ideas. And I was like, have you not seen Aaron Donald play football? Just asking. I think that's pretty much a slam dunk. But, offensive offensive rookie of the year. The next game is going to feature one that I think maybe is a candidate for that. This is your Miami Dolphins. Shockingly, if the playoffs were, this weekend, they would be in a playoff spot somehow. They are a 2.5-point favorite even this week against the LA Chargers with their rookie quarterback, who I think might be a candidate for Offensive Player of the Year. Before I ask you to pick the game, though, Jeremy, who would be your candidate right now for the Defensive Rookie of the Year? There's one that's a little tougher.
Defensive Rookie of the Year. I mean, off the top of my head, it would go to Chase Young out in Washington, just because he's been such a force for them when he's been able to play. That's a very tough question. I'm struggling to come up with another defensive rookie who's made a huge impact so far.
FC, I'll throw it to you. I have a couple of ideas, but what do you think?
I have a few guys that I think should deserve strong consideration. Isaiah Simmons from Arizona. Now, statistically, he's not going to blow you out of the water, but then you consider Nick Chandler-Jones. And what they do with Budda Baker is made possible because of how much ground an area and ability that Isaiah Simmons has for the Arizona Cardinals would be one that really jumps off really quick to me. I struggle to give it to a defensive back. So I initially thought Chase Young, but then the injuries. So I would go with Isaiah Simmons.
Yeah, the two that I'm thinking of, not necessarily better than your guys' suggestions, but one would be Javon Kinlaw. I think has been pretty good.
Very good.
And the other one is Jeremy Chin, who I think.
Carolina.
What's that?
In Carolina.
Yeah. Jeremy Chin in Carolina has lived up to the hype. Covers a lot of ground, made a lot of tackles.
You realize offensive touches this year.
Yeah, exactly. That's the other thing. I think he has a touchdown, right, on his special teams or some kind of ball touch.
Offense.
On actual offense, that's right. Yeah. So
I mean, you and I both were fans. I believe Jeremy, you also were a fan. He's 6'3". He's a freak.
Yeah, handy. Well, getting back to the game though, Miami and the Chargers. Miami, the 2.5-point favorite. FC. What do you think happens in this game?
I think that the Miami Dolphins have quietly put together one of the top 5 defenses in the NFL. I do not like Tua. I don't like the way that Herbert shows ability to put up great stats but not win games. I think the Dolphins win the game and cover, which is, I couldn't believe I'm saying it. That defense for real.
Yeah, it seems like it. Jeremy, what's your take?
Yeah, I kind of think along the same lines. The Dolphins have played outstanding defense this year. They really have. They create turnovers. They don't allow opponents to get into a rhythm. Tua hasn't come in and lit the world on fire, but he has managed the offense to an extent. And then what FC said, Herbert has played really well, but they haven't found a way to win the close games. As where the Dolphins have found a way to do that. So Miami's my pick here.
I'll tell you what, guys. What's funny is, whenever a quarterback has some good statistics, but they don't win, it makes me want to dig into it and then try to understand like what's happening that I'm not seeing, right, with the obvious numbers. From what I'm seeing today, Justin Herbert is excellent on third downs. I think he's as has been top 5 in the NFL on third down. His DVOA, play by play based on the play result, is also excellent. His QBR is good if you're into that thing. It's sort of like there's something more to it. Something with the some of the coaching choices or what his defense is doing. I think there's more to it than that guy. I'm not sold yet that Justin Herbert has the problem with them not winning games is something that Justin Herbert is doing or not doing.
It's not really Justin Herbert, which was unfair for me to say. But their big problem is the ball, Josh.
Oh, that would be the other thing, right? Turnovers, right? That have nothing to do
in and out. It's not necessarily that it's turnovers, and it's not really Herbert's fault. Yeah. They seem to put the ball on the carpet at the most inopportune times.
Sure. Well, I've been sort of Tua's had two of the more unimpressive performances and wins that you can have on the other side. So he's winning, but Herbert is not. But right now, I'm taking Herbert if I have to choose based on the quarterback. My take is I'm not positive about the game result. I guess I'll take Miami to cover, maybe win by a field goal. But I want the under in this game. So I don't even know what the over under is. But to me, I think the under is the right choice. Anyway, speaking of the under, we are under obligation to get to our 5-star matchup, which is your Pittsburgh Steelers against anybody because, we're the Pittsburgh Steelers. But this week it's your Pittsburgh Steelers against the Cincinnati Bengals at the Sunday afternoon slot. This game was flexed to. Don't ask me why. But Joe Burrow, like EAUX, will face Henry Mondu, somehow spelled the same way, but not pronounced Mondo. Don't understand. Anyway, Pittsburgh Steelers are the 7.5-point favorite. I have them as over your Cincinnati Bengals. Finally playing a home game against Cincinnati. I'll start with you, Jeremy. Tell me what's going to happen in this game.
Well, it all depends on whether Big Ben actually plays or not. I think that's the big reason why the line is everyone's assuming Big Ben plays. If Ben plays, I think we win by a solid 10. I think we find a way to get up and then just kind of manage to keep the lead.
Well, let's make it interesting this week. Let's do a pick if Ben plays and a pick if Ben doesn't play.
I actually planned on doing that, so yeah, works for me.
I was about to say, and then if Mason Rudolph plays, I mean, he did not look very inspiring last week when he got in on his brief series. Now, he probably wasn't thinking he was going to get in, probably wasn't, as prepared as he will be this week, as he's going to have the lion's shares of the reps throughout the week to make sure he's ready for this game. I don't have a lot of faith in him. I do have faith in our defense. I think if Rudolph plays, we'll find a way to win by a point or 3 points tops, because I don't expect this offense to really go off with Mason Rudolph at the helm. I think it'll be a very low-scoring game with Mason Rudolph, ball possession, control the clock type of game, to where we don't, put our defense in a bad spot as much as we can as possible.
All right, but give me a score for each. I'm going to pin you down.
All right. With Ben, I'm going with 31-17. With Rudolph, I'll go 23-20.
Wow, that's pretty optimistic, FC. What do you have to say?
Jeremy and I are pretty close. With Ben Roethlisberger, I have the Pittsburgh Steelers winning the game 31-13. Without Ben Roethlisberger, I have them winning the game 16-13. I think it's kind of obvious. What I'll add is I was watching and I uttered a statement. I think Mason Rudolph may be the worst fucking quarterback I've ever seen play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Where my brother, who's my older brother, older by 5 years, says, I think Mason Rudolph's the worst fucking quarterback I've ever seen play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And then up chirps my soon-to-be 80-year-old father and says, boys, I think Mason Rudolph's the worst fucking quarterback I've ever seen play for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So,
hey, this is a franchise that's proudly had Kent Graham and Cliff Stout, I'd just like to say.
Right. I mean, we're not even going to talk Mark Malone, Mike Tomczak.
Mike Krzyzek. Oh, Mike Tomczak. Mike Tomczak would be like an easy, clear number 2 on this team. Come on, man.
Oh, easily. Terry Hanratty, baby. No, Ben, I think that you get, the Incredible Hulk Steelers defense. With Ben, I think you might get a little bit more Bruce Banner, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I think that there's a different level where the Steelers defense realizes they have to play with Mason Rudolph.
Sure.
Tied around the backs, drowning them slowly.
Yeah, I think this game, it's a game that could be entertaining for a little while. I think Cincinnati will come out confident and it was with a bye week, especially prepared. And Burrow can make some plays. The key to him is if he's got time in the pocket, he will make some plays, right? When he doesn't have time, he gets a little loose with the football. So what that means to me is, yeah, you're going to have a couple of plays where you get a sack or you get a turnover because he's a little bit too brave with the ball. But when they happen to block it up, he's going to hurt you. So it's not a game, I think, where you're going to completely shut Cincinnati down, no matter who starts for the Steelers. But I think if you start Mason Rudolph, there's a chance that you give Cincinnati points. This defense might play better. You're right about that. But I think your offense might also give up a turnover or two that turn into points for Cincinnati. And I'll say this. Mason Rudolph's first pass, if Mike Tomlin wasn't thinking when the moment that the ball went in the air, if the first thought Tomlin had was, I'm pulling him from the game. I would be shocked if you hooked him up to a lie detector and you ask him, were you thinking about pulling Mason Rudolph when that ball went in there? Because he floated a ball to the sideline where the receiver wasn't looking at him. And the defensive back, thank God, was not paying attention to the ball. He was looking at the receiver because that was pick six city, man. That was one of the, you go into his headset and you're like, Mason, don't ever do that again. Don't ever.
Okay.
What's that, FC?
You get a headset, you say, Wildcat.
Wildcat.
We're going to stop that offense.
Exactly. All right. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, FC, what you said earlier about the young Cincinnati defense being very aggressive and playing very downhill. And the way you beat that is you use that aggressiveness against them. And you judo that into play action, into faking the screen and throwing a ball downfield, to somehow using their energy that they'll have against them to the point where they start second guessing themselves, and then you can do whatever you want with them. If you've got Ben, I think I'm confident you can do that a lot. If you have Mason Rudolph, I'm with you. Your brother, your father, and anybody else that wants to get into this conversation. I was reading this week that people were like, well, this would be, if Ben doesn't play, it'll be a really good chance for us to evaluate Mason Rudolph. And I was like, how much more do you need to see to evaluate the guy?
Weighed, measured, and he does not.
No.
Yeah.
So at any rate, I'm saying with Ben, this game is, we'll call it 30 to 17 for the Steelers, 30 to 17. If it is Mason Rudolph starting, I am going to say the Pittsburgh Steelers lose this game 17-13. So let us hope that Ben makes it through the COVID setup and they decide to play him, because, I just don't – I can't – I think the guy's regressed to the point where I believe he's worse now than he was. And you got a guy like Jesse Bates and, Gaither, these other guys for Cincinnati who are good, good pass coverage guys who, if you make mistakes, are not going to let them go unpunished. So let us hope we never see that. Let's get on to our last word and wrap this thing up. I'll start with you, Jeremy.
So one thing I was kind of thinking going into this week is, if Mason Rudolph starts off poorly, how quick does Josh Dobbs get called into the game? Josh Dobbs is a guy that has the respect of Ben Roethlisberger, and when he has come in and played, he actually has moved the ball a decent bit. I think it was two years ago where he came into that Baltimore game and made a few good throws that kept us in that game and allowed Ben to heal up in time to come back and actually win that game. It won't surprise me if Josh Dobbs gets in there quicker if Mason Rudolph starts off slow. I don't think the Steelers can afford a slow start this week. I think we have to bank on the defense getting us a crucial turnover with a short field, or even having the defense spot us 6 points this week.
Yeah, but there was also the Oakland game that Josh Dobbs got into. Yeah, for all the people thinking, let's start Josh Dobbs instead. I'm like, do you remember the last time Josh Dobbs played? Remember how eager people were to get him out of town? FC, I'll give you a last word.
I'm going to take three last words and make it in 3 quick points. Point number 1, Dallas almost beating the Steelers. The key word is almost. So anybody that knows the Cowboys fan that talks shit to you, just remember, we won, they lost. Second thing, before you run your mouth and say something smart or brilliant like, I'm not shaving until the Steelers lose, and your wife agrees to it, it might not be a great idea. Because I am rocking a very large beard now, and it's 88 degrees here in Georgia, and it's hot and it's miserable. And my final point, no matter where you stand politically, remember, your friends and your family you loved, you liked, you cared for before this madness, craziness, bullshit, pro wrestling, election, politics in the United States. Leave it be. Who cares who voted for whom? Just remember your friends and family, or your friends and family for a reason.
Unless they're Patriots or Ravens fans. But yeah, I agree with you.
Fuck that. But that's different.
Yeah, that's a line. That's a bridge too far, right?
Right.
My last word is going to be take care of yourselves and enjoy the Steelers. Like I know we talk about how we suffer. We don't enjoy the games. We suffer through them, in the words of the immortal Swiss Fail 72. But it's you don't get to have a season like this very often, and it would be such a shame to suffer and complain and bitch your way through it. Which I know 99.9% of Steeler fans are doing every weekend. But, if there's ever a time to like enjoy it a little bit, we have this quarterback we may not have for such a long time. We have this roster that we might not even have next year. And we have this record of 8-0 that we may never see again in the rest of our lifetimes following the Steelers. So I'm just going to say, try to enjoy it, and don't need to throw it in the faces of, the fans of the other teams, like your Ohio teams in the AFC North, and the redheaded stepchilds, and so on, and the New York Jet fans here in New York. I have Jets and Giants fans around me. I try not to gloat. So anyway, not to gloat, but try to enjoy the Pittsburgh Steelers games. And speaking of which, listen. Let's talk next week after a fantastic Steelers victory. Jeremy Coleman, a.k.a. Smith is Smoking, thank you, sir. Dom, a.k.a. FC, thank you, sir. And the people at Steeler Fury, who a.k.a. the people who are bitching and complaining and suffering through every game of your Pittsburgh Steelers history, on behalf of all of them, I'm Will Massasak, a.k.a. Accidental Zen on Twitter, also known as Right-Shotted Man at SteelerFury.com. Come and join us and talk Steelers football and complain and suffer with the rest of us. In the meantime, gentlemen, talk to you after a great Steelers victory. I say, go get them, Steelers.
Go Steelers.
Beat the Bengals.